Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Writer's Room. And this one I'm going to take a look at a few questions that people put to writers that aren't the standard, where do you get your ideas, or how do I get published? Those are probably number one and number two for most writers. But there's other questions you can be asking. It might be helpful, might not. I found a site that listed 50 questions. I whittled them down to 15, and we'll see what answers I give. So number one is, what literary pilgrimages have you been on? I've been on a couple. My favorite book from the time I was 10 and discovered it was Watership Down. And so of course I own the soundtrack, every movie version, and a bunch of the books, first editions, second editions, paperback, hardback. I mean, I've just got Watership Down everywhere. So obviously when I went to Britain, I wanted to see Watership Down because it's a real place. It's in Hampshire. It's just outside the town of Kingsclear. And so the first time I went there, it was actually at my first anniversary, and we climbed to the top. And as one of the rabbits says in the books, it looks like you can see the whole world from up there. It is a great view, and it was just nice to see the area that the book takes place in. Number two is, what is the first book that made you cry? Again, Watership Down. Because the main character dies at the end. Sorry, spoilers, but the book's been out since the early 70s, so I would read it to up to the last chapter, that little epilogue where Hazel dies. I would skip it. I would just read up to that point and then like open the book to page 1 and start all over again. So there was a period of my life where I was just reading this book over and over, but skipping that last little bit because it made me cry. I also cry every time I see Hazel die in the movies or in the TV miniseries that was on last year. So, you know. Does writing energize or exhaust you? Both. I think writing is one of those things where if I do writing during the day, then like in the evening when I go to bed, I feel like more like I've accomplished something. If there are periods in my life where I'm not writing, I'm too busy, I'm doing other things, I feel more like a little depressed when I go to bed, and I think, why do I feel this way? I did this, and I did this, and I accomplished all this today, but I didn't do any writing. And so there's something about doing that like keeps, I guess, my spirits up somehow for some reason. I'm not a psychologist, I don't really know why. But also it is hard, and so by the time you've written a bunch, it is very tiring, and your brain kind of feels like, I don't know, wet noodles, something. That's one reason why I don't really care for video games or more interactive kind of things. Once I've been doing all this thinking and writing and rewriting and plotting and whatever, I just want to turn on the TV and passively watch something, and just let my brain kind of check out. Question 3 actually question 4, what are common traps for aspiring writers? I think definitely that people don't realize how hard it is. I've mentioned this in some other videos, but that people will tell me, hey, I'm just going to sit down and write a book one day. And it's like, it's not really that easy. I don't know why it seems like it should be easy, but it's not. So I think that is a trap where people think I don't have to learn the skill. I can just sit down and I will have this skill without any practice. And then they don't. And, that's fair. Most of us don't just have skills without learning them, right? Maybe somebody out there magically knows how to do things without any practice or learning, but basically any skill you want in life, could be kayaking, could be becoming an airplane pilot, or I don't know what, but florist, it doesn't matter. Whatever your skill is going to be, you're going to have to learn it, right? Writing is the same way, and for some reason, I don't know why people don't seem to understand that sometimes. Have you ever gotten reader's block? I'm not sure what that means. If it's just like not being able to finish a book, certainly. There are people who have writing styles I just can't get into. Some of these people I think are really nice people. I see them doing, charitable things. They have successful careers. They have millions of followers. And I think that's great. More power to them. I'm glad that somebody, a nice person succeeded and did well at the career that they wanted. It's just that their style is something I just can't get into. And then other times, you a book just wasn't that interesting. Maybe the topic wasn't that intriguing. You put down the book and you realize years later, oh, I put down that book and I never picked it up again. So is that reader's block? I don't know. Maybe. If so, then yes, I have had reader's block. Did you ever consider writing under a pseudonym? Well, I do write under a pseudonym. And the reason I picked it was that women sometimes change their names in our society. Sometimes we don't now. But when I started writing, I had my maiden name. I thought, you know, when I get married, if I get married, maybe I'll change my name. Maybe I won't. You see stories of, say, scientists and authors and people who have used their actual legal name, and when they get married, and if they happen to change it, suddenly they have to start all over again because it's a different name. And it's like, you know what, if I just had a pseudonym to begin with, then it would never change, and we're cool, right? Just avoid that whole thing right there. I have heard male authors claim there's never a reason to use a pseudonym, but then men don't generally change their names at any point in their lives. So, you know, for women, it might be a consideration. Maybe you want to just keep your maiden name, and or maybe use a pseudonym, whatever. Just, you know, it's your preference. As a writer, what would you choose as your mascot or avatar or spirit animal? Well, probably it would have to be a rabbit, just for Watership Down. What do you owe the real people upon whom you base your characters? I left this question in because I don't understand it. I don't base my characters on real people. Does anybody actually do that? Maybe they do. If so, maybe leave a note in the comments on if you do that, and if so, how do you do that, and what do you owe the people you've based your characters on? But that's not something I'm doing that I know of. I suppose I could unconsciously be doing it, but I'm certainly not deliberately basing my characters on people that I know. How many unpublished and half-finished books do you have? A lot. Skyknife was my first book sale. That was the 4th book I wrote. So there were 3 before then that I actually, you know, started and finished. So those files are around here somewhere. I have started a few books, didn't get very far into them because either another project came up or I just lost interest. So they're around. They're around. What does literary success look like to you? We're up to question 10 now. I guess for me, literary success now would be being able to have some kind of decent amount of income from my writing. That's happened a couple of years in my life. That first year after my agent sold Skyknife and Serpent and Storm to Tor, I got the first check, which was, I think, 50%. And then I got like 25%. I think when I turned in Serpent and Storm, and 25% as a final payment when they accepted Serpent and Storm. So that first 50% payment wasn't really big because it was my first sale, and so you know, I didn't make that much money. But that was a nice amount of money for someone on their first book sale. But other than that, really, you know, it's just been dribbles and drabs. So you make a few $100s this year, make no money the next year. It's just kind of how it happens. But so I guess literary success would be for me to write what I want and at least make, you know, a few thousand a year. That would be nice. What kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning a book? Well, that depends on the book, and it can. The research you do may take years to come to fruition. So I mentioned before in one of my videos that I wanted to have a bartender character for a long time. Went to bartending school. I would have gone in person if the in-person bartending school had ever returned my emails or phone calls. So I took an online bartending course, which was not ideal. Obviously, you don't really get to practice making things and chat with the other students and the instructor and whatever. But, you know, at least I learned something about bartending and the way that bartenders handle their jobs. So that helped a little. I also got to be the guest brewer for a day at the Schlafly tap room downtown in St. Louis. So I got to play around with the beer they were making that day, and that was cool. I talked to actual beer makers. I have been on tours of distilleries, learning about various kinds of alcohol. and of course read a lot of books. So, but it also took me almost 15 or 16 years to finally get around to writing a book that had a bartender main character. So, you know, that it wasn't held up because of the research, just got held up until I actually felt like starting that series. But say for Skyknife, I researched that maybe 6 months for a year, then spent another 6 or 8 months writing it, and then spent another, I don't know how many months shopping it around to agents. And then when I got an agent, she, of course, then spent some more months trying to sell it. So there were, you know, months and months go by, but the actual research part took, you know, maybe 6 or 8 months. But I had already researched that a lot in school because I have an anthropology major, so I took all the classes I could on Central America. So I wasn't unfamiliar with the topic to begin with. If I had been completely unfamiliar with the topic, it would have taken me longer. What's the most difficult thing about writing characters from the opposite sex? And for me, I think as women, it's not necessarily as hard a job as if you're a man, because the male point of view is the one we get a lot in movies, in books, in short stories, in TV. The male main character is pretty ubiquitous. So we've been getting the male version of whatever their point of view is for our whole lives. But if you're a guy, you may have a harder time maybe thinking about a female point of view because that hasn't been used so much. I think more difficult than writing from the opposite sex would be someone with a different sexuality or different gender expression. Certainly, I would not have the experience of coming out as a straight person. So, you know, having a character who has to go through any of that, maybe coping with a family that doesn't support that, that's not my experience. I can interview a bunch of people and maybe pull it off, maybe. I would probably be kind of uncomfortable doing that because that's more than just, say, doing some research on did this happen in this year or what was this person like, you know, in his memoirs or something. This is, you know, much more an entire life, something that affects your entire life and everything in your life. So that would be more difficult. I have had gay characters, but basically that's not the point of the story. So in a short story, perhaps Dan calls, you know, David to say, hey, hubby, I'll be home late from work, and that's that. So you know that the character has a husband and that he's male, but the story is still about, you know, an alien invasion or something. So I've done that, but to actually have a whole like book from another point of view like that, I think would be really difficult. So proceed at your own risk on that one. We're up to not chapter, but question 13. How many hours a day do you write? So I don't really tick things off by hours. I do word count. I used to do pages. When we're all typing in Courier New, so you're using that really a font where there's going to be the same number of words pretty much on every page, then I'd say 4 pages a day or 6 pages a day or 8 pages a day was my goal. Now that I'm typing in Times New Roman, it's harder to tell how many words are going to be on a page. I just say, okay, screw it. I don't know how many pages I'm going to write, but I want to try to get 1,000 words done or 2,000 words done. So generally for me, it's a word count. If I could do that in a half an hour, great. If it takes me 5 hours, whatever. But it's the word count that I'm looking at. How long on average does it take you to write a book? Well, it depends on the length, and some books write faster than others. So the bartender books are only 30,000 words long. They go pretty fast, so 3 or 4 weeks will do that. For a longer book, 100,000 words plus, you're looking at 6 months, 8 months, probably, possibly a year. Again, and that might depend on how much research you do, or you get to a certain point of the book and realize you didn't do enough research, and so you better put down the writing and figure things out before you keep going. There are other factors to think about that. I have written a lot faster. I did write a 107,000 word book in 28 days, and that was a self-imposed deadline because I was going out of town, and I wanted to have the book finished and to the rest of my writers group before I left town. So, you know, you can write real quickly sometimes if you really want to or have a deadline you really want to meet. But in general, if I'm writing 1,000 or 2,000 words a day and I'm probably writing 6 days a week, it's going to take me 6 or 8 months to write a fairly decent length book. Do you believe in writer's block? It says, do not ask whether they've had writer's block. Okay, so again, yes and no. Um, on the one hand, writing is a job, and some days you don't want to do it. You know, you maybe feel bad or something bad's happened or it's gloomy or whatever reason. You just think, you know what, today I really don't want to write. Um, but it's your job. So if you're going to do it 5 or 6 days a week or whatever, then you sit down and you write anyway. And sometimes that's like pulling words out of some dark dimension where the something else is like pulling back and you just can hardly get those words to come out of your head. Other days it just writes like, you know, the angels are singing them to you, and a lot of days are kind of in the middle. So, you know, you just do it because you have to treat it like a business and like it's your job. On the other hand, if you get to a point in the book where you haven't done enough research, you may get stuck because you don't know how to get out of the situation or how to progress because you haven't done enough preliminary work to where you know even what's going on. So you better fix that. And that might be a kind of writer's block, I suppose, sort of a self-imposed one where, you know, you haven't prepared adequately. But generally, if you have prepared, you kind of know what's going on. Now, some people outline, some people don't. I used to outline a lot more than I do now, but I still have some kind of idea in my head on this is the order that things are going to happen in. Sometimes I will write it down, sometimes I don't. But if you get to the point where you just don't know what happens next, that just may be that you need to do some more research or some more plotting or something. All right, so those are 15 questions. I don't know if those answers are helpful at all. I'm going to add a 16th on what's next for this channel. I'm hoping to get an interview with Michael Long of Webster University, and we'll be talking about Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House. I want to do an episode on sort of the modern monsters that have sort of made it into our lives, like Slender Man and the Rake, and things that seem to kind of popped up on the internet. I'd also like to do some things on conspiracy theories, because those also seem to be kind of internet things. Not that there weren't conspiracy theories before the internet, but it's much easier to spread them now. You make up your conspiracy theory. The one that I saw on my Facebook feed a couple days ago was that 5G is going to kill us all. Those are getting spread now a lot more quickly with things like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and those kind of things. So I kind of wanted to take a look at that. I'm sure Anne and I will be looking at some more movies. We had planned to do a double feature at her house and actually film it at her house while we were watching the movies. And now we're all isolating and being distant, and so we can't do that right now. But once that's over, then we'll get around and do that double feature. And another thing I'm planning is to film some little horror shorts. It'll be like some spoofs of TV shows. So I've been looking for some cast members to help me out with that. Once again, once we stop having to self-isolate, I want to get out and do a little bit of filming, have some fun, put those things on the channel. So I have some things planned. Also, I'll get some more stuff up that is people reading my work. But the people reading my work have been kind of also slammed by the coronavirus. So they may have had sickness in their household, or they've been sick themselves, or something's been going on. Maybe they've lost their job, or they got a lot busier. Whatever it is, those aren't coming in quite as quickly as I thought they would, but they will eventually get here. I will get those posted on the channel. So plenty of things are still planned, and I hope you're enjoying the videos I do have up. If you want to see anything else, put something in the comments and let me know. I'd like to hear from you. So thanks for watching this episode of Writer's Room, and we'll see you next time. Remember to hit like and subscribe and that bell notification so you know when I put up more videos.